What's up? Welcome to a new episode of our special series that we're doing every weekend while there's Marvel content airing, at least now on Disney Plus. But this show is called Marvel Schmarvel. We are the three co-hosts of Schmovie podcast, and we're doing this to kind of round up all the talk about Marvel and their shows and their news and their movies and basically everything that they do. We talked about it a little too much on our podcast. I think maybe it was kind of dominating a little bit. So this was a good idea to kind of break it off and do this as a weekly series, YouTube exclusive, not a part of our podcast feed in any way as of now. But my name's Steve, and I'm here with...
I'm Ron.
And I'm John.
So yeah, like we've been off for a few weeks, coming off the Wandavision finale a couple weeks back, and now, really just got barely take a breath, and you got another series that Disney Plus is dropping, Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys want to get right into that. I know there was a couple things you wanted to mention, some news, some Disney stuff, some gaming stuff before we get too much into the show. But
yeah. So one thing I wanted to talk about was kind of this cool era of video games that we're in right now, where it feels like if you were to want to play a cool narrative in the video game world, this is the time. Between PlayStation re-releasing the Spider-Man video game, remastering it for the new gen and adding some things, and then Miles Morales being on the PS4 and PS5. And also, if you buy Miles Morales for the PS5, you also get the remastered for free, which is really cool. And then the Avengers video game that's on both Xbox and PlayStation. And then if you have a Nintendo Switch, there is Marvel Alliance 3, which is the only system you can buy that game on. So it's a ton of things to play. I mean, personally, right now I prefer the Spider-Man remaster and Miles Morales for both PS4 and PS5. And Avengers is looking good. There's a Black Panther add-on that's coming in the next couple weeks, and PlayStation is exclusively getting Spider-Man on the Avengers game, which is kind of unfair, but really cool. So yeah, this is a great time. If you're up trying to pick up a video game right now, this is the time. This is the time.
I can confirm, as the father of a 13-year-old, that the PlayStation 4 versions of the Spider-Man and Miles Morales game are awesome as well. So even if you're not on top of it with the latest console, those games are really cool looking, and I think Spider-Man's kind of having a moment these days in terms of the cultural impact. So all the different costumes and sort of different versions of the character you can unlock, it just feels like it's happening at the same time as the movies are opening up this idea of multiple versions of characters and stuff. So I just remember that the excitement in my house when the Miles Morales game came out. So yes, I can confirm, Ronald, that at least two demographics are getting hit here by this stuff. He still talks about it. He played through the game almost instantly, but he spent days and weeks afterwards just playing around in there and talking about it. So
yeah, it's a great game. Imagine free roaming GTA style video game with Spider-Man, so you could fly all around New York. It's a really cool game.
Do you mean maybe I should stop imagining that at some point in my life, because I've been imagining that?
Yeah. Now you play it out, man.
Did you guys not know I'm pretending to be Spider-Man right now?
No, I didn't know it.
Thwip.
So yeah, that's a cool thing to check out, man. So video games, it's a great time. Avengers is now 50% off because people complained about the initial run of it. It's now $30 on all the systems. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about in the video game sphere.
One more thing about video games, Ronald, since you're in that world much more than I am, is that audience just like the most reactive and vocal? They seem mad about everything. And I know that video game companies routinely like, that movie that we said was coming out for this holiday or whatever is now been delayed till next year or so. I know they do that, but it seems to me that I'm always reading headlines about how pissed off video game fans are about everything. Is that just the way it is? Are expectations too high, or do I have a distorted view of what's going on?
People talk about like cancel culture and all that stuff. Like, video game fans are vicious, man. Like, everything that happens, they're done with it. Oh, okay, the graphics, there's a frame rate drop on this update. Oh, I'm done with this game. It's trash. And they create pages for it. They have an infinite amount of YouTube videos about how awful it is with crazy zoom ins when they shit on it. It's strange, man. They are vicious, and they don't like women, which is very weird. They just don't like women doing things either, which is another whole crazy environment of toxicity. But if you like video games, stay away from that toxic shit.
Yeah, right.
And
You
just
can
play the games.
So
yeah,
it's just like it's possible to like Star Wars and not hang out with toxic people, or like Batman and not hang out with toxic people. Yeah, you can find them.
It's very possible. Just stay off of Reddit, and you will, and YouTube. You know, when you're searching, like, you know, I hate insert video game. You know, it's super strange. Yeah. So yeah, what else? What else is going on? Oh, Disney playing chicken with COVID-19. We don't know if Black Widow is going to be coming out on Disney Plus, but you know, they've kept it pretty.
What's your gut feeling on this? Like, I feel like they are playing coy a little bit, but I mean,
they're going to release it
on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Why would they?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, if they did it, they would do the premiere thing like they did for Raya and Mulan. I don't think they would drop it as a part of the Hamilton that they did. I do think that if they did it, it'd be like a premium fee. But I just feel like the vibe around theaters seems to be swinging very positive recently. Like a lot of theaters reopening in major markets, and in terms of the ramping up of like vaccines and things like that across the country. And I don't know. I just have a feeling like that they're really trying to. I don't want to say do what Christopher Nolan tried to do with the whole bring back theaters by releasing Tenet on Labor Day or whatever that was. It was like, I just feel like there might be a window where they may say maybe it comes out on Disney Plus like quicker than it normally does. Right. But I do feel like there's like this groundswell around like getting back to theaters and the timing of when it should be coming out, which is what is it May?
It's May. It's May.
Yeah. So like 2 months from now. Yeah, 2 months from now, it's kind of crazy to think about how much we've improved in 2 months. Not even really 2 full months, but I mean, in terms of the country and the pandemic and things like that. In theaters especially, like it seems like there's a bit of a, I don't know. I feel like there's a window that it seems like Disney, they're trying to keep their options open from like the reporting, but it does, I feel like they may see it as a way to really kind of try to kick off another summer movie season back in theaters. Like people are vaccinated, whatever. But it wouldn't shock me if it did, the Disney Plus, but it would definitely be that premium one. But, and also we've talked about this all the time, but like, it just doesn't feel like Black Widow is that movie in the MCU that they would really sit on this golden egg and wait for theaters. Like I do think it'll come out there the date they have currently. It's just a matter of if they're going to do it in tandem, with Disney Plus.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a window, and I think it's interesting because there's a time window, but there's also like a spectrum of hopes for a movie. So you've got like this date that they've arrived at after they pushed it back a couple times maybe, or they took it off the calendar and put it back on. And this was the movie that everybody was sort of saying. I mean, I feel like they could have announced this was coming straight to Disney Plus a long time ago if they wanted the maximum burst of hype from that. I feel like not so much that the world is really going to be that ready. Like it's hard for me to picture in 2 months me wanting to like run out to the theater. I just even if I'm vaccinated and I know other people are, and I'm probably going to get my first shot soon, but all that, like everybody's in that zone right now of going, I can kind of see the world. I can kind of see hugs coming back. I can kind of see small gatherings coming back. I don't know that this movie is if it were July, I would be like, man, July, you might be able to have a big weekend in July because people might, if I mean, again, people are being kind of stupid about this in some areas, but in others they're not. So I really don't know if in a few months we're going to be locking down again, or if we're all going to be saying, wow, people are, this is working. So I feel like that movie is just at a weird point. And I think moving it again, I agree with you, Steve. Somehow I see them sticking to that date and maybe shortening the window. But I think they have the example of Tenet on one hand, which feels like an egotistical thing that happened to a movie, but it came out in the theaters because Christopher Nolan wanted it to. And then you have other movies that we've seen come out on Disney Plus and these different surfaces, like Wonder Woman 84 coming out on HBO Max, and we've seen that the impact was okay, but it wasn't as big as it might have been back in the theatrical days. So I feel like Marvel is looking at Black Widow as a movie that might kind of slot between those things. Like maybe it'll have a modest success in the theaters, and maybe it'll be a big hit on home video, and it won't necessarily be this, like you said, Steve, this flag bearer for the future of Marvel. It'll just be this nice little movie that kind of has to come out. They can't hold it back.
Right.
I mean, it could surprise us all by being some amazing thing, but I don't know. I think that sort of, it makes me feel very strange about this movie. Like I feel like it's destined to kind of seem like an also ran because of when it's coming out and the way the world is and the type of movie that it is. But I don't see them messing around with the schedule any longer. I'm really perplexed. Like honestly, I feel like if you were involved in that movie, you'd be going, huh? This one's kind of slipping between the cracks because no one's that like jacked about it. I don't think. Like as far as I can't wait for it that I've seen.
The timing is good though. For keeping that window, because like we're going to talk about this show,
right?
You know,
Perfect.
This show ends like weeks before it would come out, and Loki starts weeks after it would come out. So it's just their spectrum, like you're saying, of like keeping the engagement going. And the reason that I think like it'd be good for them, or maybe a business decision to be like, we're going to keep the theatrical thing, is that they're trying to sell this idea of bouncing between Disney Plus and theatrical, not having to just rely on Disney Plus. So I think that, you know, as a matter of like, I don't know, training almost moviegoers, you know, TV watchers, it's like, you're not going to get everything on Disney Plus. We want you to see these movies in theaters still, you know, when the world is okay. But it might seem like a nice test case of saying, you know, we're going to still put this in the theaters. It's going to be there by itself for X amount of time. It'll eventually be on there on the Plus service, but this is what it's going to look like. Our show's going to end. You're going to go to a theater to watch our movie, however it ties into the world, and you're going to come back, and a couple weeks later, you're going to have another show to watch. And that just is like a crazy ecosystem that I think is going to be wild to watch how that develops. But another reason why I think it might be interesting for them to stick with that approach for Black Widow.
Well, what a great segue into the show that we're talking about, Steve, because Falcon and Winter Soldier is totally like an aftermath kind of story. It's picking up with where we are now in the Marvel universe. Like as exciting as it was to see WandaVision and where it went and how unusual that show was, this is almost like our first plug-in back to that. This is the Marvel soap opera,
right?
And here's the next part. So before we get too much into like favorite moments or you know things that may have bumped us or things we loved, let's talk a little bit about general feelings. Ronald, what did you think of Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 1?
It was okay. Here's my issue. Here's my issue. I kind of wish this was the second show, and part of that, I'm sorry, the first show, because you know, WandaVision presented this like new feel for the extended storytelling. You know, it was like out there. It did some crazy things. It played around with time, and we go from that to I can't even hardly use this word when we're talking about Marvel, a grounded story. This one is way more grounded in reality, the reality of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So now I'm like, oh, okay, people are getting shot. A man got his thought out. He's 99 years old. Okay. I don't feel quite as excited as I would have if this were the first offering, because it would have been very exciting to see a Marvel thing versus what WandaVision has done to my expectations of crazy. Because Loki's the next one. I mean, maybe this is good to have it resting right in between Loki and WandaVision, but it was pretty straightforward. And there's no theories. I have no crazy ideas about it. It just is the most straightforward Marvel thing I could watch. But that's not a bad thing. It was also beautifully shot. It's fun. I liked it. I liked it, but I'm not like the way that I felt about WandaVision.
You know, it was supposed to be the first one. It was supposed to come out last fall, I think. Wasn't it, Steve? Is that correct? Like August of last year was when it originally was slated for?
Falcon. Yeah. It was something. It was in that ballpark. I don't know if it was.
But it was supposed to be before WandaVision, is my point.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It was supposed to be the first one. Correct.
And should have been. It still should have been.
I don't know. I kind of like that we're back in grounded town. Like I think the things you're describing as kind of like settling, like your brain was like less engaged, maybe because it wasn't taking as many chances. I really loved the confident storytelling. I mean, I would say these are characters we love, but I would say after this hour, they are better characters than they've ever been before. Like, these are guys who are great for the quips, and they have a fun chemistry, and seeing how they come together, I'm looking forward to it. I'm back to like really low level thrills of just like storytelling about characters I care about in a world that I'm interested in. So I'm not saying like, oh, I'm over the moon about how great this was. I just remember at the end saying like, wow, I really enjoy, like, that felt good. It felt like I spent time finding out things about these characters. Like, isn't that a joke in Anchorman? One of the fake headlines he reads is that the Human Torch was turned down for a bank loan.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in this episode, we see Falcon try to get a bank loan. We address the fact that these guys don't make money being heroes, and that their lives are just as, I mean, I guess if you live in the Avengers headquarters or whatever, we had a long discussion about this, my son and I, about like, I guess your utilities are taken care of if you're like on the compound, but when there's no like team compound, what are you doing? Maybe endorsement deals, maybe government contracts, but like, I like this idea that we're getting into that nitty gritty. And to me, at the end of this hour, I found myself really, I was already interested, but I found myself really invested in like, oh, how are Bucky and Sam going to come together and help each other, and be there for each other in this moment where they both need Steve. And it's like that whole storyline that people say Endgame gave short shrift to, which is, Bucky reacting to what happens with Steve and just what's left there. I like the idea that this show starts with, whatever seemed settled at the end of Endgame when he gave Sam that shield, it's not settled at all.
All, right? Yeah.
And I think it's cool. And I think in a way you're right, Ronald, though, that this does feel like it is more modest. The intentions of it are more modest, but because of that, it means you get more, I don't know, almost like more acting, more character. Like, I liked seeing Sam's relationship with his sister. I like seeing him down on the docks with people that knew him. I liked seeing Bucky's relationship with his friend. All that stuff just really landed with me because of the affection I have. So I don't know if they're going to stick the landing in terms of the storyline, but I even thought the action was good for Marvel. Like, that opening scene with Sam was a pretty good action scene, and there's not a lot of Marvel scenes that feel that way, that have that visceral, like, this is good action. This is almost like pushing action forward in some way. I don't know. I guess I'm pretty into it.
Yeah, I think like the big takeaway for me, like, I like what feels like a setup for a type of show that's kind of like a like a 48 hours, like a Rush Hour, Lethal Weapon type of buddy show. Like, I get that vibe from it because we're getting time with these two characters, in this pilot or this first episode where they're, what is it, like 6 months after Endgame, and kind of just seeing like what problems they're kind of now that have mounted in their lives and kind of how they're trying to deal with them, especially in terms of Bucky. I really like the like the therapy session and like the list of people that he has that he's trying to in some ways make amends or do what he wants with in his own way. But I've always loved the Winter Soldier character. I've always loved Bucky Barnes as a character in the MCU. And, and I like Falcon a lot too. But I really want to see what they do with Bucky, because I really think that is such a tragic and like broken character. And like the stuff going on with him in this first episode, with his friend at the market, the girl he goes on the date with, like all that stuff is just it's really heavy stuff. Like for a show on Disney Plus. So, that's the perspective like we need to keep, is that these shows are kind of family friendly, but, they're talking about somebody dealing with, post-traumatic, syndrome, like where he was like an assassin, and he's trying to figure out how to make amends for that. Especially when, he doesn't have Steve Rogers around, especially while, to this point, he's not really engaged with Sam that we see. So I really look forward to like what is going to make them come together, which we see at the end of the episode probably. But I think it's just like a nice little step back, pretty low stakes in terms of just our characters and meeting them, but we're kind of ramping up to, like you said, John, like the Marvel like soap opera of it all. But it's just this consistent theme of like getting these characters that we don't get enough time with in the movies, in the movie world, and really kind of airing a lot of stuff out with them. And I don't know, like I really enjoyed kind of just seeing what their lives are like outside of being superheroes or being on the team, or like how they're dealing with the after effects of the blip and Endgame and all those events. But I kind of loved it, to be honest. Like I was pretty I think, when WandaVision was going up and down, like I ended up like, still liking that series quite a bit. I don't think it really kind of delivered the way I thought it would, but this show feels like maybe it's going to settle back into some of the things that I love best about the MCU. I'm really looking forward to see how they handle a lot of the action that's more like hand-to-hand action. Like that was so amazing about Winter Soldier, the Captain America film, is that the fight sequencing in that was amazing. And that's what you get to take advantage of. Like when you have characters like Bucky Barnes or even Sam, like some grounded fights too. Like I want to see that stuff. I want to see them fighting, and and there's a bunch of stuff in the trailers that we've seen so far. So those scenes, those action sequences, seem to be pretty awesome, and I look forward to seeing them, play out in full in their respective episodes. But yeah, in general, I'm definitely all in and very excited to see what what they do next, or what brings them together and how they come together.
Well, I mean, it's like the story. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ronald.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that one thing that I think is really cool that Disney does it magically in the MCU. They always hit on something that's a little heavier than we're typically used to seeing in superhero movies. One of the themes seems to be in this is what America does with its soldiers once they come back home. That is heavy to put into a kid's show. I mean, if we're calling this a kid show, it's a comic book show. As the son of a kid that was in the military, and this regimented thing that kind of happens to a person that never leaves you. It's really cool to see them handle this in a way that is, you've seen soldiers go to get loans in movies, but you haven't seen a superhero go back to get a loan. You haven't seen a poor superhero. You haven't seen a superhero dealing with PTSD or being an old man and being a curmudgeon and just being like out of sorts about, I'm not texting this person back. It's just like,
and it was a flip phone. That was the other gag of that I loved, is that it was a flip phone.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm loving that part about it. I was just saying, like, in terms of what we've had versus what we have now, it's just kind of jarring if you wanted something to be as heightened as that. But you're right. I'm ready for this show to ground me back into this kind of action, because Winter Soldier, Winter Soldier is like one of my favorite films.
It's one of the best.
It is the best for action. It is packed full of like really good espionage. So
I don't even like military imagery that much, and I think we've talked about that before on the show, that like sometimes it leaves me a little cold, but I feel like Marvel handles the military stuff really well, and it's kind of what you were just saying, Ronald. But dealing sincerely with the characters' emotions about this. But yeah, Steve, you were talking about Bucky being tragic. I actually shouted at the screen at one point, "We forgive you, Bucky. Come on." Like, don't feel so like you were being controlled. I think almost anybody who knew the story would understand. I think his relationship with the old man is obviously complicated and super torturous and sad. And I don't know what I would advise Bucky to do if I was his, the angel on his shoulder. I might say you're still better off just being his friend and consoling him than you are breaking his heart. But I don't know. I feel like there's some heavy stuff going on, and you're right that he's a 90-year-old or 100-year-old, 106-year-old curmudgeon on top of being like, a hot young action hero in this. And I feel like Sebastian Stan, he's been in some movies where people have noticed how good he is, but I really think that guy is doing something pretty interesting.
He's great
with this character. And you mentioned that therapy scene, Steve. That was a great scene. I remember sitting there going like, this is a new thing for Marvel to have this deep of a dive into the psychology of a person. And there's touches of the supernatural and the crazy superhero stuff. But it was it's very honestly dealing with that emotional aftermath, what these characters have to live with when they're not out saving the day or throwing punches. And if it stays this grounded, I don't know, the experiment of this one, Ronald, might be that it's just a solid action movie, kind of well told. They've done that with Winter Soldier, some aspects. We're about to get Black Widow after this. Maybe this will be the right tone to tee us up for a movie that's a little bit more in that military espionage side of things.
That's true.
And then the Loki series, by all accounts, they're going way out with some of the crazy stuff that's happening in that show. So, I think that the fact that these shows can all be different is ultimately a strength, but will it give us a little bit of whiplash in between? Maybe so. Maybe if you want one flavor more than the other, it'll seem like, well, this show's pretty standard. But I think sometimes just, a good, like we all know when you put on a good action movie or a good like thriller, you just settle into it. And I feel like this is, again, as much as I've enjoyed the Marvel stuff, a lot of their pokes into genre territory have been sort of superficial, like, oh, this is our blankety blank movie. This is our movie where we do this style. And they don't quite dig in as deep. This feels like, as you said, Steve, with all the elements that are coming together, it's set up to be a story that exists in that world of slightly more realistic power. And it allows them to touch on issues that, I don't know, like you mentioned the stuff this show is dealing with, Ronald, the military and everything, but it's also dealing with, like, what does it mean for a black man to stand for America? And I think that having Don Cheadle and Anthony Mackie standing before that shield and, like, talking about what it would mean to assume that mantle, that scene to me was really, like, for the MCU, it's still PG-13, it's still family friendly, but it touched on this whole question of that aspect of, like, well, it means something different for you to do this. And there's a responsibility there, but there's also, like, maybe an ambivalence there about, I don't know. I thought that was woven in there, which, you know, I didn't quite expect to see, but that was a cool character to see pop up. I like that we're just going to see characters when it's appropriate to see them. So yeah, definitely. I don't know. This seems like it can turn out to be a really cool thing. I think we're all such Winter Soldier fans. This basically is Winter Soldier the show in a way. You know,
it feels like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, Anthony Mackie's character in general has always been kind of a little off to me. Like, I can't figure out what it is. He just seems like a soundboard of sly things he's saying while he's flying around. Yeah. And to have him fleshed out this way, and Winter Soldier, like, obviously Winter Soldier, I really want to know about his time in Wakanda, because he just paused with this, like, great amount of admiration when he talked about being there. That was the only calm that he had. I wonder if he fell in love with anybody there. That's an interesting
he said
thing,
he found peace there, which, yes, is a very beautiful, simple statement, but right, it
which
could
is
mean
really
a lot
cool.
of things.
So yeah, these are two characters that I've always been curious about, and, you know, for different reasons, obviously. And to see this kind of play out the way that it is, and them not even being in the episode together. What'd you guys think about them not being? They didn't even interact this episode. What'd you think about that?
I think it works. I mean, I think it's a good approach, honestly, because I think, like I said before when I was mentioning it, like the separation of these two stories, like with what's going on in their lanes in life right now. What is it that brings them together? Because that's, like, what brings them together is going to what hopefully helps both of them find clarity and, like, you know, kind of straighten out their lives a little bit. So, I mean, I think kind of giving some time, you know, in what will be like almost 6 hours of a story, you know, giving them time to kind of show us as a viewer, like, what's going on. We don't need to immediately, I don't believe we need to immediately see them together, because these are two, you know, they're both of their names are in the title of the show. So it's like, we know eventually that we're going to get a lot of them together. So I think it's cool to be able to just spend time with them separately, because if we didn't, we wouldn't learn about, you know, Sam's family's history with the boating industry, like, or, you know, we wouldn't learn about, like, what Bucky's trying to do in these sessions, like with coming to peace with what he's done when he was under control. You know, you just wouldn't get a lot of that, I don't think. So I feel like if you jumped right in, you would also get influence from one on the other if you were trying to still tell those stories. Because, you know, if Bucky was in a scene with Sam and his sister, it would be a different scene. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if they were together already, you wouldn't have that familiar, and, like, you wouldn't have that brother-sister dynamic really fleshed out 100%. So I like that we get some time with them in their lives, just with them in their lives. And then, you know, when they come together, I think that that's where they kind of will see the strength that they possess in numbers, and also just, like, to be there for one another, because, like, you know, they were Cap's two guys, you know, so, like, and he's not around. So, like, they're going to be each other's guys, I think, is what we have to believe. And it'll be fun to see how that happens and how that becomes so strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I pictured the show starting with them already quipping and running around together. So when they didn't do that, I was like, oh, this is great. We're actually seeing some more character here. But, you know, it could have been a much flashier, more superficial version of these guys that we were introduced to, and I think we would have been fine with it if it was fun. But it's doing something different than that.
Yeah.
So there's a reveal at the end of the show.
My namesake.
I call him Cap with the big ears. But they revealed that there is a replacement Cap happening. This brings about a lot of things. Like, you know, these people have a real personal relationship with Steve Rogers. And now they're seeing the mantle of Captain America being replaced by Lord knows who this person is. That looks nothing like Cap. I know if I was a little kid and I saw him, I would be devastated to see this new Captain America. I'd be like, that's not Cap.
No, we know, but I mean, comic readers know that it's John Walker, which again, I'm not happy that that's the character I get associated with, is like the asshole fake Cap that the government creates. But he's a guy named U.S. Agent in the books. So, I mean, he's another character just like everything else, but the Marvel version of him is going to be, you know, the MCU version is going to be something new that we can expect. They got an actor that I really like, Wyatt Russell, to play him. So I feel like that's bringing another, like, they do that thing of bringing people into the fold.
Yeah.
This guy is sort of a character who keeps fucking up and does the right thing the wrong way and he's got like, they've kept him. He's always a guy who makes things complicated. Like Wyatt Russell said about his character, that the John Walker in the comics exists to kind of make, when he shows up, you know, things aren't going to go that well for anybody involved. So I'd be interested to see how they do that with the show, because again, it's going to be a more grounded version. So we're going to get a guy who's a fly in the ointment, and who doesn't deserve this slot. But there's this weird thing too of like, if you're asked to do a job and you turn it down, they're going to give it to somebody else. So I feel like Sam and Bucky, maybe not Bucky because he was never in the running, but I feel like Sam's got that on his mind too, of like, well, I thought I wasn't ready, but now I see someone who's really not ready. I mean, I can see how I think we know there are other villains to come, but I think this guy is going to be a cool kind of middle ground antagonist who's like ostensibly a good guy, but who might be, you know, fucking things up for the heroes. So to me, that just feels interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing not just this actor in this universe, but what they do with this crazy character. And I'm ready for the jokes. I'm just ready for all the jokes that are coming.
Me too, man. Me too. Oh man.
There's so many pull quotes of like articles with like people associated with this show saying John Walker is a total asshole. John Walker is a creep. So it's like, all right, yeah, I'm just gonna copy them all. You know, put them in my little.
Are you sure they were talking about the show? And
I never. You know, I just have like I just have like a little filter that brings me all the articles. So I never know if it's the character or me. But
jeez.
So what else? Anything else you want to mention?
I said that at the beginning, but I'm still pretty high on the show, to be honest with you. I'm ready to see how this unfolds. You know, it's just like you said, a little jarring going from tone to tone. Like, but you know, I should also think about this like the way that, you know, I read comic books. Like I'm reading a comic book that has a very specific tone, and I'm going to something that's set in a different place and has a different tone. And you know, that's what it feels like. These like comic books playing out in this like fully fleshed out episodic form, and it's a gift. It feels like a real gift, man. I'll never completely hate a show unless it's like the most tone deaf thing I've ever seen in my life, but I'm loving it. I'm really looking forward to it.
You didn't say fuck this show, so I knew that you were okay with it.
John Walker. You can, that's going to become like an insult soon.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why I hope that he redeems himself in some. I mean, I'll be watching the season very, very carefully to see. At least maybe he'll be funny or something. I don't know. But you know, they did make. You know, there's a couple of scenes where Steve was wearing a helmet that pushed his ears out like that, and I remember thinking that was back when they didn't know how to make Captain America not look dorky. It's almost like they decided, let's just go ahead and let this guy look dorky in the helmet. You know. But I mean, that's an interesting thing, because, you know, you would think Bucky would be your sort of ambivalent middle ground, sort of, is he good, is he bad kind of guy. But no, we now have another guy who's even more like questionable. So it does kind of push. It's like, it's one of those storytelling things that helps you create a more heroic impression of Bucky, is to say, well, now we have someone else who's actually working for the government and doing what they want. And now Bucky can seem more like his own man or something. So yeah, it works for the story. But, you know, they could be dealing with this character in the long run. I think they know people like this thread. They know people like the sort of Captain America and all of his ancillary characters. I think it's one of the things that works for broad audiences the most right now. So, and maybe it is because it's a little grounded, but
yeah.
Well, it's pretty damn cool.
What else? Anything else?
I don't got anything else for now. We'll be doing this again next weekend.
Yeah. We said it's 6 episodes, right? This season, 6, like roughly 1 hour-ish, little longer.
Yeah.
Than WandaVision was. Yeah, it'll be really interesting, because you got some characters popping up even from the trailers. We put a poll out after our last WandaVision episode about like looking forward to certain characters. Obviously, you have the 2 namesakes in the show, but like Sharon Carter's there.
Yeah.
And who else? Oh, Zemo.
Yeah.
From Civil War. So yeah, it'll be cool to see how those characters, and you can kind of see how that's fleshing out in this episode. But it's cool to see the familiar faces, but then also kind of get the hints already that there's going to be a lot of new things woven in this story, which I think is going to be what makes it kind of unique and gives a show its own voice, like not just a Winter Soldier show, like or not just the second version of it. So definitely curious to see how that plays out. But all right, cool. Do we have an idea for a poll? Are you going to post a poll for this still,
Yeah,
Ronald, or what?
Question.
What's a good one?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Have you forgiven Bucky? do you forgive Bucky?
That's a good one.
Or what should Bucky do with his friend? That's a moral question.
Yeah, let's find out the guy's name, the older guy's name, and we could post that question. Because that's a big conundrum this man is in. I don't know what the hell he's gonna do, and I think that man's gonna find out at some point.
I mean, it's almost dramatically necessary that he find out. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Hydra will turn him into an evil character. An old man that's like, I'll kill you.
Well, it's kind of like Sam turning down the job and then it going to another person. It's like Bucky might wait to tell his friend and someone else can reveal it to him. You know what I mean? It's like one of those, you can't hide from the past. You can't hide from the responsibility. I think we're going to see these themes coming up on this show because it seems to be dealing with that idea of like, what are you responsible for? What are you supposed to be doing?
Right.
All right, cool. Well, so we'll do this again next weekend for the second episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This episode, these videos from Marvel, again, there's a YouTube only feed. So if you want to subscribe, you can click the subscribe button on the YouTube page. If you're seeing this on like a post on Facebook, whatever it was, try to come back to our YouTube, subscribe there if you don't mind. And back to our main podcast, which is Movie Schmovie. You can subscribe to that podcast if you're interested in any of the major podcast platforms or visiting pod.link/Movie Schmovie. And when Ronald posts the Twitter, the poll that we're going to do, we try to do one of these every week. Obviously participate in the poll. But if you have any other thoughts about the show, feel free to tweet at Movie Schmovie. Let us know what you thought of episode number 1. I think the episode was called New World Order, right? Yeah,
I think so.
So let us know what you thought of that, and we'll see you guys, next week for episode 2. What was it? As always, you've been Aunt May something.
You're our Aunt May.
You're our Aunt May. You're our Aunt May.
That's what But you've been Aunt May is good. You've been Aunt May or is good too.
Yeah, you've been Aunt May to us, I guess. Thanks. See you guys. Leave this drawn out pause.
Yes, please do.
Leave it in there. It's got to stay. It's got to stay.
Do it. And I want you to leave everything in all the way through to the awkward moment at the end where everybody leaves, but they're not off screen yet, and so their face goes dead for 1 second.